Good afternoon, welcome back. Been away a little while, but I was recently inspired to look at Gothic bindings after finding a new, well, more than one kit by Vectoria Designs, and I'll put a link to that below the video. This one was called Medieval Castles in Alchemy. Was the little extra kit that you could get in the bundle, and it had all of these interesting pages that I thought I needed to do something in a medieval style of binding. The only other time I've done anything close to this was when I did a girdle book some years ago, and I will put a link to my video below in the description box. But this is basically done in a very similar way. Just a little bit about this. It's called a quarter leather binding. A full leather binding, there's leather everywhere. Quarter leather, it just comes over the spine. This is a little bit wider leather here than would normally be in a typical quarter leather. I just liked the dimensions of this. A half leather binding is something that comes over the spine, and then also you would have leather corners. And that's just the terminology. Doesn't really probably matter, but just so you know why I'm calling this a quarter leather binding. This little medallion here was made by a local jeweler for me. I had her make me several. I've shown one in a previous book, I know. But there may be a jeweler in your area that has this different kinds of stamps and can stamp out things. This is in pewter. Brass also looks lovely. The leather's pared down very thin at this edge. It's sewn on double cords that are laced through and then pinned in by pulling a little piece of taut leather through the hole to tighten the support in the hole. And I'm going to show you a little bit about this process because it's got lots of steps, and some of it really helps to have a woodworker in your life. So the first thing that you do is that you create a text block that is sewn on double cords so that you can determine the heights and widths of your boards. I did not do packed sewing on this one, so there's space between the stitches here. You can do packed sewing. I just didn't do it this time. The spine lining is a piece of muslin that I have stiffened with a little wheat paste, and then I cut slots in it so it fit over and extended. If you don't want to go through all that rigmarole, you can just make linen strips that come down either side. After you have rounded the book, these books are not backed, they are just rounded. The board goes into the area created here by the swell of the book, and I'll show you a little bit more about that in a second. But you don't have to hammer it and round it, so you don't have to have all of the various presses and things that are required to do that kind of a job. So once you get the book sewn and rounded, and the lining helps it hold the rounded shape, you sew on what's called a primary end band, and it actually is going to be attached to the board from its support, and it is part of the structure. So it is sewn down into every section. Which is different from a lot of the decorative end bands that people make, where they either glue on an end band, a pre-made end band, or it's just tied down in every few sections. Once you have your book and you know, so then you would know the height, then starts a lot of the fun. The first thing that was done here is this board was planed very smooth, and then it was cut to height where it has squares. I was using 3mm squares at the head and tail. The next operation is to create, and I hope you can see this little recess here. There's a little recess here so that the paired leather bangs up against this wall here, and then becomes, you have a smooth cover that you don't feel ridges going from the board to the leather. So you get to height, that's planed. The next thing that you have to do is shape the spine edge. And it's shaped based on the curvature that you have here, and then you want it to be rounded over so that you have a nice transition from the spine over here without a ridge of any kind. So you know, this is really by feel. My husband is very helpful. He did planed off the edges to get it to roughly the right area, and then I just used sandpaper to get it to where it felt right. Once you have that done, then the next step is to mark out, and I don't know if you can see, there's little pencil marks here. Mark out where the cords are coming across the board, and then you proceed to drill the holes and cut the channels where the cord is going to go over the spine in this channel, down through that hole, then through a channel on the back side and out that hole, and then it'll be a little loose in there, and you will push a little triangle of leather in there and pull it up tight, and it cinches the cord in so it doesn't go wiggly wobbling all around. The other thing that we had to do for this particular book was I had this medallion. He had some practice pieces of wood, and he had the tool to cut the circle. Didn't want to go all the way through. There was not a tool that was perfectly the same size as this. So what I did to just minimize the idea that the hole was a little bit bigger than the medallion was I just painted the inside of the hole with black acrylic paint. That's all I did. And then we fashioned a clasp. It's got this little hook area here that goes into this little slot, and that was out of some metal that he picked up at Lowe's. I had some rivets, for leather work, and we used that to secure things to the strap and to the inside of the board. I think you can kind of see here where the rivet came through. You can also see here on the shadow where the strap came through its slot here, and then it had a little channel, and that was put into that little channel to flatten it out. I did not put an extra lining on here of like watercolor paper to disguise all of the connections here, because I kind of wanted to be able to see them for future reference, but I also wanted this paper over them to sort of protect the supports as they came through and protect over the leather so that it wouldn't be damaged as I played around with the book. So that is number one. I've got 3 in process, and as I get them done, I will come back and tell you if there's some other things that I would think that you might find really helpful. Have a great day.